I'm Dan Pascone, CEO of Tailored Wealth and host of the Making Sense of Your Money podcast. Real conversations to help high earners make sharper decisions so their money works as hard as they do. This is episode number 50, and today I'm joined by Sebastian Hidalgo, who is the head of strategy and head sales trainer at Durindal. And we break down what hostage negotiation can teach us about sales, why selling is a diagnostic process, and how empathy and authority build trust, and why the best closers ask better questions instead of pitching harder. Before we dive in, make sure you're subscribed on your favorite platform. And if you find the show valuable, I'd really appreciate you leaving a quick review. Thanks so much and enjoy.
Brought to you by Tailored Wealth, helping business leaders live their version of a rich life.
Welcome to another edition of the Making Sense of Your Money podcast, where we cut through the financial noise and help business leaders to make smart, confident money decisions. All right, Sebastian, thanks so much for joining Making Sense of the Money. This is going to be a fun conversation today. I appreciate you joining us.
Dan, thank you so much for having me. I was looking forward to this the moment we met.
Yes, exactly. So we met recently in a networking group, and Sebastian has an interesting background, an interesting business, and frankly, an interesting way that he goes about the business. So I'm excited to chat with you a little bit about that today, Sebastian. So share with our audience a little bit about who you are, what your firm does at Durindal, and let us get to know you a little bit more.
Okay, so my name is Sebastian, born in Venezuela, but I'm Italian, raised in Italy. Currently living in Germany, looking to move to the US this year. I have a background in hostage negotiation, which, as you can tell, is why I'm here probably, and
Yes.
psychological operations. And in terms of business, I am the guy you call when you need to close a $140 million deal with a big enterprise, or when you're a founder who needs to improve their close rate. That's me. We do, at my company, Durindal, we do consulting for also defense tech firms, and we help them take their products to market because we tackle the dual-use companies. For those new to defense, dual use means technologies that can be used both for commercial and military purposes. So
Okay.
yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah, very cool, man. There's a lot to unpack there, and you and I had connected, and you've got it in your background. One of my favorite books, which is Never Split the Difference, which is all about hostage negotiation skills and tactics used in the art of negotiations. But now, from my understanding, you've taken your background in a similar art that Chris Voss, very famous author of that book, has done, and you've applied it to sales trading, which, our audience is, many of them are sales and revenue leaders or sales and revenue executives. So tell us a little bit about your background and how you've applied it to your business and how you help the companies you work with today.
Here's the thing that I forgot to mention with the introduction. I created a thing called the SWAT Sales Method. That's
Okay.
SWAT, Sales with Advanced Tactics. And I created that out of the realization that I was closing a lot of deals while telling myself that I was a terrible seller. And in that discrepancy, during my psychological operations training, I had this epiphany. Okay, I have been subconsciously using the same principles you find in Never Split the Difference, which, by the way, I keep there as a conversation starter. And it tends to work with the right
Did
people.
a good job. It worked for me. It worked for
With
me.
the right people, it always works. So what I did is I took the same principles that I was taught during my training as a hostage negotiator, and I applied them to sales. Now, I have had people listen to me speaking on stage or speaking on podcasts and tell me, well, but there's nothing really new about this. And, there's nothing new under the sun. The difference that I would say is significant between my sales method and all the other obsolete stuff that is like Challenger, Sandler, and MedPick that do not work anymore.
Sure.
The key difference is that we turn influence into a process, meaning if you apply the things I teach my sellers to apply in the order I tell you to apply them, you will get a higher close rate. And we know this because the principles that I imbued in the methodology are universal. They come from human psychology. They come from how the brain reacts to certain circumstances. So what makes it special is not any specific feature of it, maybe one, but mostly the fact that it pushes buttons on the brain that work.
Very, very interesting. Very, very cool. All right. So let's rewind and we're going to bring this full circle. All right. Tell us about, I'm fascinated by your background as a hostage negotiator. So how do you get into that? What were you actually doing? How did you transition out of that to doing what you are today? That's some interesting stuff. I talk to a lot of folks that have either spent a good portion of their career in some form of sales or sales leadership, and I've brought on different sales coaches and whatnot onto the podcast, but I've never brought on a hostage negotiator. So tell me a little bit about
I'll
that.
tell you about that. And I want to clarify something because I don't want to do a Tim Kennedy for those who know the reference. I didn't work as a hostage negotiator. I just went through the entire training. And after that, I went into business immediately.
Got it.
And
Okay,
that's where I
perfect.
always draw a line between me and Chris Voss. If you talk about pure negotiation and communication, the best guy out there is probably Chris Voss, hands down. But if
Yep.
you talk about sales, the best guy out there is probably me. The reason is that he was a hostage negotiator for longer than he's been in business. I've been in business for way longer than I've been a hostage negotiator. So it's just two ways of thinking that are parallel but not overlapping. Now, back to your question. How did I get into that? By being stubborn, meaning I had career plans when I was younger to become a diplomat, and I didn't have any connections in my family that work in diplomacy. I wanted to be an ambassador until I met some of my network in Italy, which was a pretty mighty but small network. And somebody told me, hey, I know this professor in Rome. He works with an institution that's training the first peacekeepers in Italy. I talked to this professor. He tells me about the peacekeeping course, and he goes, but they are also doing the training for some of the first purebred hostage negotiations in the country. Now,
Okay.
there was a small problem, which is I was 17. So this guy tells me, you're a kid, you're too young, you're a civilian, you're not even a university student in any of the areas that would matter for this. I have no reason to bring you in. And I don't think this would work. Now, that's where the natural seller in me came out without me knowing, because I don't think this would work doesn't mean this won't work. It means he
Yep.
doesn't think it would work. He gave me a chance. So I told him that, and he goes, I'll talk to somebody and let's talk next week. Lo and behold, next week becomes I call him for 6 months in a row every week. And he always keeps telling me next week or next month. And I don't stop calling this guy literally for 6 months until at the end he goes, kid, you are the most stubborn and resilient person I've ever met, which I hate on one side, but makes me curious on the other. So I'm going to get you an introduction. And from there on, you're on your own. I like you, but that doesn't mean you're in. You talk to the trainers. And if they like you, maybe they'll give you a spot.
Okay.
And that's how I got into it, despite, being a civilian. And then I turned 18 in the meantime. So that removed one of the obstacles.
Well, I mean, I think that skill set or those traits of being stubborn probably worked pretty well in sales. So I think you probably ended up in the right field for sure.
Probably.
All right. So now you mentioned a bunch of the other sales methodologies. Several of several of the folks in our audience have probably heard them. I know of each of them. Tell us a little bit about what's different and how you've applied your experiences having been trained as a hostage negotiator to sales. What are like some of the core principles and the fundamentals that you help to teach? And what are the outcomes you help your clients to achieve based on your background and your unique experience?
Let's start by talking about the principles and the fundamentals that are wrong in the other sales methodologies, meaning I keep seeing from companies at all levels, be it enterprise or startups, they get sales training and all their sellers, and the sales trainers listening to this can easily send me an email and say that it's not their fault. You didn't train them into that. But all the sellers I meet, or most of them, dedicate most of their time to jumping on a first call, pulling up a slide deck, and describing what you have to offer. Or some of the better ones do a lot of research beforehand and come into the call prepared to preach to the prospect what's their perspective on the prospect's problems. Okay. And then you have the Sandler guys who are building a lot of rapport, who have this like upfront contract that is supposed to set an aura of professionalism around your sales interaction. And none of that works. The reason none of that works is because people have seen it a bajillion times.
Right.
The market is oversaturated with all these tricks. On top of that, Sandler was created in 1967. We didn't have phones back then. We didn't have the internet. Challenger is 2011. Epic is 1990. None of these methodologies account for the reality of the modern buyer. The modern buyer is overwhelmed and spoiled. They have infinite options. And the most attractive of those options is doing nothing. On top of that, most buyers are very sophisticated. They've tried before the thing you're about to sell them. If you don't take that into account, that you're not just competing with your competitors, but you're also competing with doing nothing, and you're also competing with the past failures, you will not close that deal. Now, the way I see selling and the way I teach my students to sell is sales is a diagnostic process. You have to put on the doctor's hat. And I know some sales trainers disagree with me because a seller is not a doctor. We don't get to have that level of respect and authority, but you have to at least act like a doctor, meaning Yes, come in with your ideas, come in with how you think you can bring value, but spend more time diagnosing, asking questions, going deep and earning trust than you do trying to pitch and explain and trying to assume what you think they're dealing with. Because the prospect, from their perspective, nobody knows their situation better than them. Even
Sure.
if, Dan, you and I know that when somebody comes to you with a problem, sometimes they're dealing with something entirely different. They're just not
Sure.
aware of it. Your job as a seller is making them make that jump. But for that, you need to influence them. And to influence them, you need three factors, which is empathy, trust, and authority. Without these three factors, you're not going to influence them. And if you don't influence them, you will not influence their decision. So some of the principles that I teach is treat people like people. They're not walking wallets. Diagnose them, and don't just diagnose the present on who they're competing with. Diagnose the past. In some cases, diagnose the future. I wrote an article recently about how you can use regret in sales. Turns out during a sales interaction, if you make somebody think about the consequences that they would regret regarding not doing something about their problem, you make them way more likely to buy what you're selling because you're getting them to paint a negative picture of a future they don't want. But of course, there's ways to do this in a soft and low-key way so that you don't trigger what I call sales resistance, which is what everybody gets, everybody feels every time a seller goes, "Oh, so what are your challenges? Or what's keeping you awake at night?" Those questions cost you trust. And the more trust you lose, the less likely you are to close.
Got it. So, but without giving away your secret sauce, if you will, what do you do? How do you help folks to develop into the skills to get the prospect to essentially divulge that negative outcome that they want to avoid, right? Because I think that's somewhat common sense, but getting them to do that, having been in sales myself is not an easy thing to do. So tell us a little bit about how you get there.
It all depends on how you start the call, which sounds
Okay.
weird, right? But the start of the call is usually where things get really awkward or things will get really interesting. Meaning, most sellers restart the call with weather talk. They will do some research and talk about the hiking post they had on LinkedIn and
Right.
make up that they like hiking too. They'll see a baby on Instagram and they say, "Oh, I also had a baby."
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
like, "How's your baby?" The issue is, and you've been in this position if you've been sold to, you know the person on the other side doesn't care about any of those things. You know he doesn't like hiking. You know he's trying to do the proverbial building rapport. What I teach my students to do is accelerating trust. You accelerate trust by making people feel seen. So
Okay.
what I like doing, and this is a manipulation technique, say calling a spade a spade. This is a manipulation technique that I teach my students so that they don't use it for manipulation, but they use it to gain trust. So what I do is I ask them a couple questions at the beginning of the call that usually relate to their career. So
Yep.
they know that it's something that interests me because it's a sales interaction. And I will use their answers to try to get a guess on who they are. And I will use what Chris Voss calls a label. I will use something like, "Hey, Dan, it sounds like you are somebody who really likes moving fast and not losing time on decisions." And you will say, if I'm right, you will say, "Yes, that's totally me." Your brain will like that to the point that whatever I ask you next, I'm way more likely to get honest answers from you. So what I'm doing from the beginning of every sales call is getting your trust to a point that the information you share with me, you share as if you were sharing with a friend. I had this conversation right before this call. Somebody told me, "Oh, but I don't believe in building rapport." I'm not building rapport. I am having a guided conversation that looks like rapport, but I'm steering the prospect in the direction I want them to go. It's just done with questions that are so natural and that go so deep that people are not they don't feel like I'm about to pitch them because I'm not. Because one of the things I preach and one of the main rules of this methodology that I created is don't pitch, prescribe. You diagnose and you prescribe. The implication of that is you have to earn the right to pitch. And you only earn the right to pitch when you fully understand the prospect situation. And there's ways to earn it. Like there's specific moments that I teach that indicate when you earned it and when you didn't. But until you earn the right to pitch, what I tell everybody is you don't have a right to talk about what you do, even in one sentence, until you earn the right to pitch. Because what prospects do at the beginning of every call is, "So tell me more about your company."
Right.
And they don't know it, but that's their brain trying to make a quick judgment of who you are and what you do so they can reject you and go on with their day. Basically, they're trying to get you to pitch. That's the one thing I tell people to avoid. Don't jump on a call and answer that question. Always revert it. "Well, I've been talking about myself the whole day. Tell me a bit more about you." And that's how I start the process.
Got it. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. All right. So tell us a little bit about the types of firms that you work with. I'm sure this methodology can really be applied, across the board when it comes to sales and prospecting. But who do you work with? Who's the right customer for you? What are the types of organizations that you're typically?
So given that our consulting business is so specialized in defense tech and we don't consult for anybody else with a couple exceptions, the sales training we do is industry agnostic, which means we have dozens of people trained at the startup level, small teams under 10 people. The majority of our clients will sit between the 200 and above mark. And we have some enterprise clients that need more vast sales training. What this means practically is that we have packages that adapt to everybody. Like, are you a solo founder or a 3 people team that needs training? We have that for you. Are you an enterprise that wants a full week of sales training because you need to do outreach and you need to do proposals and you need to cover every aspect? We have that for you. And sometimes we get brought in, yes, for sales training, but also for after that to help companies close a deal. Like, okay, we have had clients that are small companies trying to close Fortune 100 companies. They called us because they needed the full picture on how do we close this, and that's one of our other targets. But I hate that I don't have a precise answer. But being that, as you said, this adapts to so many industries, and we tested this on now 13 industries, so we know it works. That's why we offer it to everybody.
Got it. Okay, makes a lot of sense. Tell us a little bit about you and your career. I'm interested to hear, like, what is an inflection point that maybe changed sort of where you went within your career, Sebastian? Because it sounds like you've got a really interesting background.
An inflection point. That's interesting. For a long time, I had the same preconceptions about sales that a lot of people had because I had, as I told you, I had the wrong idea. I was closing deals, but I didn't want to see myself as a seller. I was like a consultant and I was a
Right.
brand strategist. And people somehow kept coming to me for sales advice, but I ignored that until here's the inflection point. I went through PsyOps training. PsyOps stands for psychological operations. With the same people that train me in hostage negotiation. One of the first weekends of the training, some of us had been training hostage negotiation, not only me, and they recap some of those principles and they start explaining how some of that relates to PsyOps. And as the trainer is having that conversation, I just phase out, I stop listening. And I had this realization that I've been selling a while and I've been selling great and people come to me for sales advice. So perhaps there's something I'm doing that's right that I can use to serve other people. So when I had that realization, just, not that day because I needed to focus on the class, but I immediately started reviewing past calls, reverse engineering what I do. And I started testing it as a system. And that was the inflection point. And that's when I stopped doing any kind of consulting for a while. That's when I stopped telling myself I'm not a seller. That's why I just fully embodied, like, this is what I do, this is what I will try to do. I worked for some people for free to make sure this worked. I supported people in closing their deals, several industries to make sure this applied. I fucked up. I fixed the methodology. I refined it. But the inflection point was that moment in PsyOps training where I realized that everything that had happened the previous years was leading me to that one point where my real value add to the world is, hey, I know how to teach people how to sell in an ethical way that gets them to close at a higher rate. And that's extremely exciting to me.
That's extremely exciting to a lot of people. And this is this podcast is all about your money, but we do like to bring on professionals that can help you to make more money, right? And a lot of our audience is in sales, so Sebastian certainly checks that box. All right, great background. Thanks for sharing your insights there. Now we want to get to know you a little bit more, right? So you're officially entering the lightning round. All right. And the rule with the lightning round is I never give anybody a heads up beforehand. Just give me the first thought that comes to your mind. Could be a one-word answer, could be a long story, and anything in between. You ready?
Let's go.
All right. One meal for the rest of your life. What is it?
Steak.
Steak. Interesting. I thought you were going to give me some sort of Italian dish. No?
Oh, no, I love steak. I'm a total carnivore. I mean, I don't do carnivore diet, but I love meat.
That sounds good. One tool or piece of technology other than your phone or your computer that you can't live without.
Other than my phone and my computer.
Yeah. Could be hardware, could be software, and anything in between.
I would say a pen. I'm the type of person that I don't know what I know or I'm thinking until I write it down.
There you go.
So I'll say a pen. Or a mechanical keyboard.
There you go. Okay, that works. What's one habit that's had a major impact on your success?
The gym and martial arts. So fitness.
Tell us about your.
I train right now. I'm just lifting weights because I'm in this space where I'm too busy to train martial arts. But I used to compete in amateur tournaments. Anyway, I train 6 to 7 days a week. I have your typical bro split. And when I do cardio, I just hit the back really hard. So yes, that's what I do. I lift weights and eat a lot of protein. But that's what had that has taught me so much about business and life. It's a major part of who I am.
So what has that given to you? Tell us a little bit about what that's taught you. What has it benefited you other than being in shape and energy and all the health benefits that we know come with it? How's it impacted your business?
Fitness teaches you that you can always bounce back because
Yeah, sure.
you get injured or you get sick. I've never been seriously injured, knock on wood. Never been seriously injured, but I've been sick a lot. So sometimes I'll spend between travel and being sick a month out of training. And sometimes that happened while I was training again martial arts. And for a period, for example, I got so busy that I could not train combat sports at all. So I was completely out of shape. Like the point that throwing 5 punches, I couldn't take it. And then 5 weeks of training, 8 weeks of training, and I'm back in top shape. And what fitness teaches me all the time is that no matter how off you are from your game, no matter how long you've been away or how like hard you think it will be, you can always bounce back. And all you need to do is put in the reps and the consistent work to enable the circumstances to lift you and get you back to the spot you were before. I think that's one of the main lessons I've taken from fitness.
Yeah. And I find that it's a common trait. Folks that are high level sales professionals or sales coaches or folks that do what you do tend to have some sort of fitness process because, the comparisons between the consistency levels that comes with fitness and the consistency levels to be a great seller, be a great revenue professional. There's a lot of, common threads there. So appreciate you sharing. All right.
I would say, some sellers should at least try Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because
Okay.
trying to out grapple somebody and choke them out or not get choked out, it is a level of problem solving that is a lot. It is the physical version of objection handling. So
There
do
you
really
go.
try that.
And it sounds like it's not something that you would recommend just overcoming with brute force, which, a lot of times happens in sales, right? That you got to
Yes.
think your way through it a little bit.
Yeah, I talked to my former jiu-jitsu coach. I told him, and he was asking me about the sales methodology. We caught up after a few years that we didn't talk, and I told him, I have to credit you and the sport for teaching me how to handle objection. And he goes, "What do you mean?" And I go, "Objections are like somebody trying to exert resistance on you in jiu-jitsu.
Sure.
So you just need to find your way around it, and brute force will not get you there. If you use brute force, you just break like you will break, and in the case of deals, you lose the deal. So yeah, that would be my weird business fitness trip. Do jujitsu if you're in sales.
I love it. I love it. Can you share with us a personal or professional milestone that you're currently working towards?
Right now, and if you're listening to this, maybe you can help me here. I just finished writing my book about the sales methodology. Right now, I am looking for a literary agent and to get this book published. I'm trying to avoid self-publishing for many reasons. If you know a literary agent, send me an email and I'd be happy to, give you a revenue share of the book. I don't know. Let's do business. Send me a literary agent.
All right, I like it. So that's an ask to our audience right there. I happen to know some folks that are in the books business, so we'll chat on offline. All right, last one. If you could give some advice to your younger self, it sounds like you had you were a fast riser, an early starter in what you're doing, giving the stories that you told when you were 17, 18 years old. But what advice would you give to your younger self?
That's interesting. My advice to my younger self, it wouldn't be take more risks because that's a tendency I have, but it would be have more faith.
Okay.
Like, don't second guess things. Throw yourself into weird situations. Don't think you can't. Just have faith. Like blind, stupid faith. Just go into whatever. And I think trying more things. I made a lot of mistakes to get here, but I think trying more things would have gotten me here sooner. Like, start selling more. Like, see yourself as a seller. That's a good piece of advice. But yeah, have more faith.
All right, I like it. I like it. And then finally, if our listeners want to connect with you, collaborate, learn more about you and your firm, or maybe reach out about that book deal, where can they find you? What's the best place to reach you?
So you want sales training, you're in defense and you need to take a product to market, or you want a revenue share of the book, Sebastian@durindal.com. That's the email. Otherwise, find me on LinkedIn, Sebastian DP Hidalgo. Those are my main platforms right now. I'm also on Substack, but yeah, LinkedIn and email are probably the best ways to reach me.
We'll link those in the show notes below. Sebastian, thanks for joining us today. Love hearing your perspective. Very, very interesting background, and love hearing about what you and your firm are doing. Congratulations on your early success and good luck with your move to the States.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for having me. This was great.
Absolutely. That's it for the episode. You can find our podcast along with our newsletter and our YouTube channel all for free at makingsenseofyourmoney.com. And as always, prioritize your version of a rich life.